The next short story we are going to look at is called Just Lather, That's All, by Hernando Tellez. He said nothing when he entered. I was passing the best of my razors back and forth on a strop. When I recognized him, I started to tremble, but he didn't notice. Hoping to conceal my emotion, I continued sharpening my razor. I tested it on the meat of my thumb and then held it up to the light. At that moment, he took off the bullet-studded belt that his gun holster dangled from. He hung it up on a wall hook and placed his military cap over it. Then he turned to me, loosening the knot of his tie, and said, "It's hot as hell. Give me a shave." He sat in the chair. I estimated he had a 4-day beard, the 4 days taken up by the latest expedition in search of our troops. His face seemed reddened, burned by the sun. Carefully, I began to prepare the soap. I cut off a few slices, dropping them into the cup, mixed in a bit of warm water, and began to stir with the brush. Immediately, the foam began to rise. "The other boys in the group should have this much beard too." I continued stirring the lather. "But we did it right, you know. We got the main ones. We brought back some dead, and we've got some others still alive. But pretty soon, they'll all be dead." "How many did you catch?" I asked. 14. We had to go pretty deep into the woods to find them, but we'll get even. Not one of them comes out of this alive, not one." He leaned back onto the chair, and when he saw me with the lathered-covered brush in my hand, I still had to put the sheet on him. No doubt about it, I was upset. I took a sheet out of the drawer and knotted it around my customer's neck. He wouldn't stop talking. He probably thought I was in sympathy with his party. "The town must have learned a lesson from what we did the other day," he said. "Yes," I replied, securing the knot at the base of his dark, sweaty neck. "That was a fine show, eh?" "Very good," I answered, turning back the brush. The man closed his eyes with a gesture of fatigue and sat waiting for the cool caress of the soap. I never had him so close to me. The day he ordered the whole town to file into the patio of the school to see the 4 rebels hanging there, I came face to face with him for an instant. But the sight of the mutilated bodies kept me from noticing the face of a man who had directed it all, the face I was now about to take into my hands. It was not an unpleasant face, certainly, and the beard, which made him seem a bit older than he was, didn't suit him badly at all. His name was Torres, Captain Torres, a man of imagination, because who else would have thought of hanging the naked rebels and then holding target practice on certain parts of their body? I began to apply the first layer of soap, with his eyes closed. B continued. "Without any effort, I could go straight to sleep," he said. "There's plenty to do this afternoon." I stopped the lathering and asked, with a feigned lack of interest, "A firing squad?" "Something like that, but a little slower." I got on with the job of lathering his beard. My hands started trembling again. The man could not possibly realize it, and this was in my favor. But I would have preferred if he hadn't come. It was likely that many of our fraction had seen him enter, and an enemy under one roof imposes certain conditions. I would be obliged to shave that beard like any other one, carefully, gently, like that of any customer, taking pains to see that no single pore emitted a drop of blood, being careful to see that the little tufts of hair did not lead the blade astray, seeing that his skin ended up clean, soft, and healthy, so that passing the back of my hand over it, I couldn't feel a hair. Yes, I was secretly a rebel, but I was also a conscientious barber and proud of the preciseness of my profession. And this 4 days' growth of beard was a fitting challenge. I took a razor, opened up the 2 protective arms, exposed the blade, and began the job. From one of the sideburns downward, the razor responded beautifully. His beard was inflexible and hard, not too long, but thick. Bit by bit, the skin emerged. The razor rasped along, making its customary sound as fluffs of lather mixed with bits of hair gathered along the blade. I paused a moment to clean it, then took up the strop again to sharpen the razor, because I'm a barber who does things properly. The man, who had kept his eyes closed, opened them now, removed one of his hands from under the sheet, felt the spot on his face where the soap had been cleared off, and said, "Come to the school today at 6 o'clock." "The same thing as the other day?" I asked, horrified. "It could be better," he replied. "What do you plan to do?" "I don't know yet, but we'll amuse ourselves." Once more, he leaned back and closed his eyes. I approached him with the razor poised. "Do you plan to punish them all?" I ventured timidly. "All." The soap was drying on his face. I had to hurry. In the mirror, I looked toward the street. It was the same as ever, the grocery store with 2 or 3 customers in it. Then I glanced at the clock, 2:20 in the afternoon. The razor continued on its downward stroke, now from the other sideburn down, a thick blue beard. He should have let it grow in like some poets or priests do. It would have suited him well. A lot of people wouldn't recognize him, much to his benefit, I thought, as I attempted to cover the neck area smoothly. There, for sure, the razor had to be handled masterfully, since the hair, although softer, grew into little swirls, a curly beard. One of the tiny pores could be opened up and issue forth its pearl of blood. A good barber such as I prides himself on never allowing this to happen to a client. And this was a first-class client. How many of us had ordered the shot? How many of us had he ordered mutilated? It was better not to think about it. Tellez did not know that I was his enemy. He did not know, nor it did the rest. It was a secret shared by very few, precisely so that I could inform the revolutionaries of what Tellez was doing in the town and what he was planning each time he undertook a rebel hunting excursion. So it was going to be very difficult to explain that I had him right in my hands and let him go peacefully, alive and shaved. The beard was now almost completely gone. He seemed younger, less burdened by years than when he had arrived. I suppose this always happens with men who visit barbershops. Under the stroke of my razor, Tellez was being rejuvenated. Rejuvenated because I am a good barber, the best in the town, if I may say so. A little more lather here, under his chin, on his Adam's apple, on the big vein. How hot is it getting? Tellez must be sweating as much as I, but he is not afraid. He is a calm man who is not even thinking about what he is going to do with the prisoners this afternoon. I, on the other hand, I, with the razor in my hands, stroking and restroking his skin, trying to keep blood from oozing from these pores, can't even think clearly. Damn him for coming, because I am a revolutionary and not a murderer. And how easy would it be to kill him? And he deserves it. Does he? No. What the devil? No one deserves to have someone else make the sacrifice of becoming a murderer. What do you gain by it? Nothing. Others come along and still others. And the first ones kill the second ones, and then the next ones, and it goes on like this until everything is a sea of blood. I could just cut his throat, just so, zip, zip. I wouldn't even give him time to complain, and since he has his eyes closed, he wouldn't see the glistening knife blade or my glistening eyes. But I'm trembling like a real murderer. Out of his neck, a gush of blood would spout onto the sheet, on the chair, on my hands, on the floor. I would have to close the door. And the blood would keep inching along the floor, warm, irrigable, uncontainable, until it reached the street, like a little scarlet stream. I'm sure that one solid stroke, one deep incision, would prevent any pain. He wouldn't suffer. But what would I do with the body? Where would I hide it? I would have to flee, leaving all I have behind, and take refuge far away, far, far away. But they would follow until they found me, Captain Toro's murderer. He slit his throat while he was shaving him, a coward. And then on the other side, the avenger of us all, a name to remember, and here they would mention my name. He was the town barber. No one knew he was defending our cause. And what of all this, murderer or hero? My destiny depends on the edge of this blade. I can turn my hand a bit more, press a little harder on the razor, and sink it in. The skin would give way like silk, like rubber, like the strop. There's nothing more tender than human skin, and the blood is always there, ready to pour forth. A blade like this doesn't fail. It is my best. But I don't want to be a murderer. No, sir. You came to me for a shave, and I perform my work, honorably. I don't want blood on my hands. Just lather, that's all. You are an executioner, and I am only a barber. Each person has their own place in the scheme of things. That's right, his own place. Now his chin had been stroked clean and smooth. The man sat up and looked into the mirror. He rubbed his hands over his skin and felt it fresh, like new. Thanks, he said. He went to the hanger for his belt, pistol, and cap. I must have been very pale. My shirt felt soaked. Torres finished adjusting his buckle, straightening his pistol from the holster, and after, automatically smoothed down his shirt, smoothed down his hair, he put on the cap. From his pants pocket, he took out several coins to pay me for my services, and he began to head toward the door. In the doorway, he paused for a moment and turned to me and said, They told me that you'd kill me. I came to find out. But killing isn't easy. You can take my word for it. And he turned and walked away. I hope you had the chance to listen to the reading of the story or took some time to read it on your own. I'm going to go through the questions now and help you out a little bit with them. In the past, some students have had some difficulty understanding the story, so I want to give you a little bit of help along the way as we go through these questions. So, question number 1, who is the narrator of the story? How do you know this? So the narrator is the person telling the story. The story is told from a first-person point of view, and the narrator in the story, he is a barber, and he is working as an informant for the rebels. So in your response, you can include some of those hints that I just gave you. Number 2, where does this story take place? So dig deep into the story. You may need to do a little bit of history on the story itself. But I will give you a hint and let you know that the location itself is in Colombia. Number 3, who is the protagonist and who is the antagonist? So the protagonist is always the main character, and the antagonist is the character working against the main character, so against the protagonist. So in this case, we only have 2 characters. So the characters are the barber and Captain Tellez. So you make a decision and let me know who you think is the main character and who you think is the secondary character that is working against the main character. Number 4, what do we know about Captain Tellez? Describe his character. So he is a killer. He speaks about killing several times in the short story, as does the barber. He is military, it has to do with military dictatorship, likes to be in power and have control over everyone. He will kill anyone that is against him or not on his side. So consider those ideas when you are creating your response. Number 5, the narrator faces an internal struggle throughout the story. What are these internal struggles? So he is very afraid. He is very fearful of Captain Tellez, but he is also confused. He doesn't know whether or not he should kill Captain Tellez or just do his job as a barber and give him a good clean shave. He thinks he should kill Captain Tellez because it is like an act of revenge. He essentially is not on Captain Tellez's side. But then again, it's an issue of morality. He is not a killer. The barber, in fact, is not a killer, and he just wants to do the right thing. Number 6, what is the climax of the story? So the climax is the heightened part of the story. Where is the most exciting part, or possibly where the story takes a dramatic twist? So what do you think is the climax? There's no essentially right or wrong answer, but think what is the heightened part of the story. So if you can, try to write down a specific passage even from the story. That'll help me when I'm marking it, make sure you're understanding what a climax is. So if I'm to give you a hint, the climax revolves around the idea of killing Captain Torres and when the barber decides not to kill him. Number 7, why did Captain Torres go to the barber shop? Explain. So for this question, I want you to think beyond the obvious, that Captain Torres went to the barber shop for a haircut, or in this case, for a shave of his beard. I want you to think beyond that and actually think back into the story. So a hint is that the answer is right near the end. Number 1, Captain Torres wanted to go into that barber shop and see the barber and prove that he was brave. Some of the soldiers that worked for Captain Torres doubted at some points his bravery. So he wanted to go in there and say, I can do this. I'm not scared of the barber. He also knew what the barber was up to and knew that the barber had thoughts and had plans to kill him. So he wanted to go in there again to show his bravery, but also to see what in fact the barber would do. Did the barber have the guts, or was the barber brave enough to kill him? In this case, obviously no, the barber was not. Good luck on those questions.